Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. Thanks so much for being here. Today's episode, we continue down the journey of mindfulness and being present. And at the end of the episode, there's a very special guest, well, special to me, who comes on to share some jokes. So I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you, as always, for writing in. I love hearing from you. You can do that at pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram at James E. Rohr. And without any further ado, enjoy the episode. Hey, what's happening? So, thank you guys so much for writing in with your thoughts and feedback and feeling about the suffering concept and, setting your aim. It's something that I've been continuing to think an awful lot about. And it's been interesting for me because, I was wondering if you guys have ever had this happen to you where, so I've been in this place of really like committing to being present in a way unlike that I ever have before. And what's interesting to me is because like when I was in the acupuncture clinic and when I was seeing, 8 to 10, 12 patients a day sometimes, I was like really present there, right? And it was just so easy for me to be like in the room and focused. And, I love working with people. And so hearing their stories and connecting and doing the acupuncture and feeling the energies. And I mean, it happened yesterday. I was treating somebody here. My neighbor came over and like as soon as I put the needles in, all of a sudden it was like, this giant like cat came in the room, and it showed up to me like the energy was kind of like a jaguar. And all of a sudden it was like, what I knew was it was like a huge cat and that we were no longer alone in the room, that there was this other energy that was there. And I didn't say anything to her. I wanted her just to have an experience. And when I was taking the needles out, she's like, oh, like this felt very different today. You must have done different points. And I did the same points that I always have been doing with her recently. And I said, well, the points have been the same, but I think that there was something very different about this is the session. You're right. And as I started telling her like what I was seeing, she just like bolted upright and she was like, oh my God. She's like, I felt I had this image of this lion and she had this whole like experience with the lion and this communication with the lion. And, I had seen it kind of like, I saw this energy of that big cat kind of like working through her spine, almost like a kundalini kind of thing, but it was like with this big cat energy. And she said that she felt it like massaging her back, and it was just so cool because without having said anything, like our experiences matched up, right? Like there was enough similarity there. It was really, really fascinating. And so like being present in that way has always been like easy for me. It's been such a gift to work with people and to have that happen. But what I've been finding is since I sold the practice in New York and came back here to Miami, and as Jen and I have been doing a lot more doTERRA work where I'm not having that one-on-one interaction like with somebody laying on the treatment table and in that setting very often, that I've been able to see how my mind is going in a lot of different areas when I don't have like a very clear thing to focus around. And so it's been, a bit of a transition the last few months. I mean, I have my coaching clients and that's great. And I'm on the phone with them, but it's still very different than like being in the room. Right. And so I've been observing my mind going into a lot of areas, and with the future, with Wyatt possibly going to Italy and all of these things, like there have been a lot of variables that we're trying to juggle and manage and figure out, like, what we're going to do with our own lives when we grow up. As you guys have heard, the RV and like all this stuff, right? So what I've been really practicing lately is just observing anytime my mind gets pulled or goes in a direction other than the present. And part of why I think I was missing it with myself is that oftentimes when I think about my future, so not in the Enneagram, but in the Strength Finders test, maybe some of you guys have done that, one of my top qualities is Futurist, right? And I think that's what makes me a good practitioner and a good coach, and to be able to see and anticipate. But what I've been really getting in touch with is how that might actually be pulling me from the present moment. And a lot of times when I think about the future, it's always like good stuff. It's like I'm envisioning the life that we want and the things that we're creating, and I'm assuming that it's going to be amazing and epic and like awesome. So I never really saw that necessarily as like, I never got in touch with how that like it might come at a cost of actually being like really present. It certainly, I feel it if the thoughts of the future are like full of anxiety, but that typically isn't like how I live, but what I've really been focusing on doing is like, if I find my thoughts drifting into the future or even the past, but more often for me, I'm inclined to go to the future. I've been just really focusing on like, no, let's just come back and enjoy this moment. And so one of my favorite meditations that I share with my clients, and it's one of the things that I love about Qigong so much, is doing it with your eyes open. And so I'll oftentimes encourage my clients to spend a couple of minutes every day, or to practice it as a meditation, where you just look around the room, wherever you are. If you're outside, you just look. You notice the sunlight, you notice what's in the room, you don't attach to the story if things are messy, or you find dust on the floor about how you're horrible, like at keeping your house clean, or that you needed to hire a housekeeper, or that you neglected your chores for the week, like to avoid going into those places of that full-blown like story writing, especially when it comes to self-criticism, and instead just to look around. And this for sure goes back to my early experiences on Vision Quest, where, you just kind of go out into the wilderness, rope off an area that's like 8 by 8, and then you just sitting there, and, staying alert, right? Hopefully staying alert, but to just see and to see like what is. And as I've been recommitting to this practice, what I'm finding is like I'm really connecting with just the wonder of each moment. And this is something that I don't think I've ever done before in any kind of like sustained way. I've been blessed to have lots of moments, but never really this kind of sustained commitment to just like allow myself to be full of gratitude for the water in my hand, or the opportunities to be with Wyatt, or, just to see the sun shining, or the leaves change, or, the wind blowing, and to really allow myself to be just enraptured with the moment. And I think, Kobe's death had part to do with it. And then I've also been reading this Alan Watts book. I think it's called The Wisdom of Insecurity. And it's like he's just sort of like re-emphasizing that like so much of the future that we make up is never going to happen. All of these different scenarios that we spend time like creating and evolving and living in, like they're never going to happen. It's never going to manifest. And so how much energy have we wasted putting into a future that's just never going to happen, and at what expense, And it's like what I have experienced, and what other people have talked about, is that like, if you're always so busy planning like the future, when that future happens, chances are you're not actually going to be present in that, because you're going to be thinking about the next thing. Like you haven't conditioned the muscle to be fully present. And so this is like what I've been setting my aim at, recently, which has been absolutely tremendous. So what's been happening, what I've noticed is the shift for me. And I'm curious if you guys have had this happen to you, where it's like my vision has changed, where like the way that I'm actually seeing the world is shifting. It's almost as if I'm getting different, like I wear glasses and contacts. So it's almost like I'm getting a different prescription, but it's like from my soul vision. That sounds so fucking cheesy. But it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, the feeling, the experience is as if like I went from having all this sort of swirl of thoughts, and they were mostly positive, like around my head, but there was a lot of things, to now it's like that whole area, like that's so much calmer. And it's as though my vision, instead of going from like my head, is like coming from my body, but it's not even that precise. It's just like I'm aware of like a full presence in the moment, where it's like I'm seeing things doing what I can to see things as close to like as they are, instead of how I want them to be, how I need them to be, concerned about where they came from or where they're going to go. And what's different about this, I was trying to explain it to Jen, and I don't think I explained it very well. It's not like, she talked about it like her experience with being vegetarian, when she chose to be vegetarian a long time ago. She's not a strict vegetarian anymore, but she was for a while, where it's like, you see something, you see the videos of the pigs or the cows or the chickens and stuff. And it's like, there's a clear perspective change. And like, for me, it's not like a conceptual thing. It's not like you recognize all the sweatshop stuff and then, you're just constantly looking for all of the things that might have come from a sweatshop, or like if you're vegan, you just start noticing all the leather things. It's not like a conceptual thing like that. It's really as if the feeling is almost as if like something has come down. And it's like we're adjusting how you see. Not necessarily, I suppose it's based a little bit on a perception thing of like just more of a commitment to being present, but it doesn't really feel like that because it's not even that like fully conscious. It's just like the way that I see everything is shifted. It's almost like if you take a psychedelic and, everything is like distorted for a while when you're like in that peak experience. I'm not seeing distortions, but it's like that, where it's not just like in one thing or two areas or three things. It's like everything, the way that it seems is just different. It's like more, I don't know, it's like more palpable. And it reminds me of when I had Lyme disease. So when I moved to New York, I got Lyme disease. We were there for just a couple of months. It was crazy. We went upstate once, and I remember I woke up one day and I was wearing a pair of shorts, and Alex said to me, she goes, "Oh, what's that on the back of your leg?" And it was like a red spot with like it looked like the Target logo, with just like one dot and then a ring around it. And she was like, "Oh my God, you have ringworm. How can you be so unclean?" And like, she made this whole thing. She's like, "Get away from me and like clean everything and whatever." And I was like, "I don't have ringworm." Like, I was like, "What does it look like?" She took a picture. And I was like, "Oh, right." I was like, "That's a bullseye rash." And so my first thought was like, "Oh, I have Lyme disease." And I was like, "Oh, I don't really get sick like that anymore. Like, it's probably not going to happen. Like, it's fine." And then I went to the office, and I had this client come in, and like halfway through the treatment, I just started feeling really feverish and sweaty and like just like awful. And then I went back home, and I was like, well, like maybe I'm just like got a bug and I just got to rest and whatever. And so for the rest of that day, I had like, the fever was really high. I had all like the body aches were killer. I woke up the next morning. There was another ring around the bullseye, and the rash started to spread. It was on my chest, and there was one on my face. And I was like, "Oh shit." And I was so glad that it happened, because it led me to go to the doctor. Because normally I'd just like, "Oh, I'll be fine. It'll be fine." So I went to the doctor, and he's like, "Yeah, that looks like Lyme disease." So I started the antibiotics, and I got home from the doctor, and I still felt terrible. And I entered this kind of like bizarre, sort of almost like a hallucination. And I remember laying there, and I saw this energy. I felt these like, I don't know, these beings like gather around me. There were like 2 or 3 of them. It was so weird. And they looked at me, and one of them like held my head back, and the other one says, "Are you really ready to see?" And I was like, "I don't know." And they were like, "Are you really ready to see?" And I was like, I don't know. I was like, "But I'm really sick right now. This is horrible." And they were like, "Lay still. We need to clear out your third eye." And the other one comes in with like some kind of spoon looking thing. And I felt them like scraping my third eye as if they were like, I don't know. It was like, like if you would like scoop out an avocado or something, or like when you're clearing out the pumpkin seeds in a jack-o'-lantern, it was like, that's what it felt like, and it was like, I remember feeling the discomfort of it as they were like scraping, and I felt all the swirling energy above like where the third eye is. It was crazy. And then all of a sudden, like I was looking around and I was like, started seeing more energies. Alex was there, her sister was there, Wyatt was there. I started like seeing all these energies and I was just like, oh my God, I was like, I feel terrible, but I gotta get out of the house. And so we went out and we went to this park in Brooklyn that we lived near at the time. And I remember just like looking around and it was like, I was like seeing auras again, but it was more than that. It was like, you could see the kind of the fibers of connections between people. And then I was also being shown like the people's connections with their heart. And, you know, so some people were like really connected to it and other people energetically, there was like this huge distance, and seeing the relationships as like couples would walk by. It was really hard to describe. You know, now that I've had more experience with some of the psychedelics, it you know, there's some similarities there, but I was totally sober. I mean, but I was hopped up on Lyme disease. It was crazy. I was just like, oh my God. And so that kind of vision change was really intense. And it's been interesting in this more recent experience where I haven't had anything like profound necessarily, like I haven't felt a bunch of entities being like, we're going to like rewire you or reprogram you, but that is how it feels, you know, and the way that I'm seeing things and interacting with things, there's a clarity that I haven't experienced. I don't know, maybe ever quite like this. And so, you know, I'd love to hear from you guys out there if you've ever had this kind of like vision change or where it's as though like the way that you see everything like has a little more kind of definition and clarity to it and substance, and that you're just able to be in the moment. I don't know. I wish I could describe it better. Maybe one of you guys can write in pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Instagram. And I'd love to hear your experiences with it. And so, you know, one of the things that's been interesting that I've been observing in myself is that in this process of really just being super present, I've been witnessing Jen, who is like really focused and driven with her business and like, you know, hitting the goals that we want to be hitting. And she's been like so much in work mode, and it's been amazing. And I feel so supported and grateful that she's doing that. But I've been aware of this thing where I'm just like so doing this experiment where I'm so committed to the present moment, and she's like really focused on, you know, creating a great foundation for our future, that I've been observing some guilt coming up where it's like, should I be doing more? You know, should I be efforting more and doing more and, you know, contributing more and all of that? And I realized that that's, you know, just part of this like kind of programming. But guilt is an interesting thing as it arises. We talked about it, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. Somebody was writing in asking about feeling guilty. And, you know, so I turned to one of my favorite books recently has been that book, Letting Go by David Hawkins. And he talks about guilt. And one of the things that he says is that, you know, guilt is basically like self-loathing. Guilt is hearkening back to, you know, a lack of self-worth. You know, which I just thought was like a really interesting thing. And he says that, you know, it's an invitation to become even more aware of some of that programming, right? So like guilt doesn't just happen. Guilt comes because somewhere along the way you got a message that said that you should behave in a particular way. You know, and for me, like you should be working hard and, you know, contribute to the people and like whatever. And so, you know, like when guilt arises, it's an opportunity to just say, okay, where does this belief come from? How has it been programmed to me or passed down, maybe even intergenerationally, you know, and to become aware of it. So guilt can really be an ally to become aware of some of this programming that we may not have normally been aware of. And then, you know, there's always the opportunity to say, okay, well, if I care about being productive or being of service or helping others, is there a way to move forward and to participate like that in a way that doesn't have that energy of the guilt? It isn't without the being hard on yourself and, you know, that contraction of energy. Can it just simply be, oh, I'm looking forward to making a contribution, you know? And so that's really been a really powerful thing, because I was, you know, Jen and I talk about all these things, and what I've been discovering is that, you know, being really in that present moment, I get to stay in touch with my heart, right? And then I actually have kind of more energy and more clarity to make the kind of contribution to our business and our family and to Wyatt and all the things in a way that that before was like a little bit different. It's like, it's just so much cleaner to be like, no, I'm here and like, yeah, this needs to be done. So I'm going to do it, whether it's whatever it is, doing the dishes or cleaning the litter box or taking, a dog for a walk or like whatever your things are that you have to do, to be able to do it from this like joy of the moment, or not even a joy, just an awareness of the moment. Instead of like, oh, I've got to do this, otherwise she's going to chew me out or he's going to be upset, and like all of that walking on eggshells that sometimes we do around some people, to instead just be like, oh, no, this is like, there's an opportunity here for me to contribute to the household, or to be kind to myself or to others, or just to take care of my responsibilities, but to do it in a way that's so much cleaner, to do it in a way that doesn't have the fear and the guilt and that contraction of energy, or that like brooding or that hanging over your head kind of feeling. And instead it's just a gift, and so it's been interesting. But I can imagine that if somebody just trying to do this kind of practice, that they might be seen as being lazy, or they might be seen as not caring. And perhaps I was guilty of that in part of my marriage, because like this is kind of an artistic thing, right? Like artists talk about like the importance of this, and they have to kind of be in a certain way, and it can seem as though they're just like not doing anything else or not being productive. And instead it's like, this commitment to the moment. But I do think that, there's a balance between like shirking responsibilities, but to be really present while still also, tending to the things that need to be tended to. It's like, being able to find and experience enlightenment while you're, shoveling manure or washing the dishes. That there isn't, being present doesn't mean that you have to be, secluded into a cave. In fact, it's like a really beautiful experience when you're actually just doing and contributing, and then feeling so much joy. So anyway, now I'm just sort of speaking in platitudes, which I fucking hate. But how do you talk about the present? I mean, how do you talk about like this stuff without just sounding super cheesy? But if you've had tastes of it, like, and it's like you can vibe on someone who's like, yeah, it's like, oh, I've been there, I felt that, like, yes, So hopefully you're getting more of that experience instead of just like, oh, it's another bro talking about being present. But I don't know what the fuck. Here we are. It's just happening. So thank you guys for being here. And Wyatt's here. He wants to say something. Hold on a sec. All right, my man. Welcome to the podcast. If you're going to be here, you got to say something. You got to say something.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Can you tell the people the joke?
Which?
The one about the cannibal? We're going to soften the energy of the podcast by telling a joke about a cannibal.
What did a cannibal get when he was late for dinner?
What?
A cold shoulder.
Oh.
Patient. Doctor, I feel like I'm invisible. Doctor, who said that?
Awesome. Do you have any more? One more. What advice do you have for people who are looking to feel happier in their life?
To buy my potions.
To buy you're coming on to sell your potions? What's the name of your potions?
I said it in the last video.
Yeah, but they may not have seen that one.
But why?
Because not everybody listens to the same things.
Oh
they don't listen to all the things. Tell them the name. It's part of branding. You gotta get people used to the name.
Potions.
What is it?
Yoshi's Potions.
Yoshi's Potions. Website coming soon.
Likes.
What did you just say? You're whispering into the mic like that? Are you trying to give them subliminal messages?
I said give 1,000 likes.
Give 1,000 likes. You got to start making videos. We got to do a whole branding thing for your Yoshi's Potions.
Podcast.
All right, buddy. We're gonna wrap up this episode. Can you do your Yoshi voice?
Yoshi.
Awesome.
Why do we have to wrap it up now?
Because people have to get on with their lives. And so we're going to wrap it up. Maybe we'll record a separate
Oh,
episode.
come on. But I want to keep doing it.
Well, we
Just
can.
a little longer. Just a little longer. Just a little longer.
Okay, well, you got to say something interesting.
Like what?
You tell me what's interesting about you.
I know it's interesting. Can you give me those headphones?
Next time.
What?
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being here.
Wait. I still have things to say.
Well, say them.
A fan works.
Say what you have to say.
Well, you asked me a question.
Are you going to tell me how to do this? Okay, what was your favorite thing about snowboarding for the first time last week?
Bombing down the mountain.
Nice. And what was your favorite TikTok video?
A booze chasing a cat.
The booze chasing the cat. So they had a cat that looked like
Mario?
they had a cat that was like in a scene like from Mario Brothers, and then the ghosts were chasing it. And then
Boo.
the boos were chasing it. And then when the boo got to the cat, what happened? The cat disappeared.
No, he had a red face. Like in Mario, then he just fell down.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Wyatt, for coming on.
Whoa.
And,
Keep
we'll
asking
catch
me
you next
questions.
time. Next episode. We'll talk. We'll bring it in next time.
Give 1,000 likes.
Give 1,000 likes. Yoshi's Potions. Now we're gonna have to create a thing for you. Where do you want to have them like it? On Instagram or on TikTok?
All of them: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter.
Twitter. Oh, now you're gonna have a Twitter account?
All of them.
All right, we'll have to set something up. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys as always for being here, and have a great week.
Watch all the episodes.